When money melts, bread wins. This is not a riddle. It was a simple, hard reality for millions of people in Germany in the early 1920s. Imagine a world where the paper notes in your wallet lose value, not just every day, but every single hour. Picture shopkeepers frantically changing price tags on goods multiple times before lunchtime. Think of ordinary citizens pushing wheelbarrows overflowing with cash to buy a single loaf of bread, to buy a few potatoes. This was the scene in the Weimar Republic. The most famous example of modern hyperinflation, a powerful, unsettling story about what happens when the very foundation of an economy, its money, crumbles. To understand the story of Weimar Germany and how a modern industrial nation could descend into economic chaos, we must first grasp the destructive power of hyperinflation. It's a term you might have heard, but its reality is far more terrifying than just rising prices. Most of us are familiar with inflation. It's the gradual increase in the price of goods and services over time, a slow erosion of purchasing power. A small, steady amount of inflation, typically around 2% per year, is often considered normal, even healthy for a growing economy. It encourages spending and investment rather than hoarding cash that will slowly lose value. This means the cup of coffee that cost you $2 today might cost $2.05 next year. The change is slow, predictable, and manageable for households and businesses. Hyperinflation, however, is a completely different beast. It is not just high inflation, it is inflation that is out of control. The technical threshold for hyperinflation is a monthly inflation rate exceeding 50%. That means prices more than double every 2 months. But in the worst cases, like Weimar Germany, the rate can become astronomical. Prices rise at an explosive and accelerating rate. It is a monetary firestorm that consumes everything in its path. During a period of hyperinflation, prices don't just rise monthly or weekly. They can double in a matter of days or even hours. This isn't just about the government printing more money. It's about a collapse in trust. As people lose faith in the currency, they try to spend it as fast as possible. This is called an increase in the velocity of money. Everyone rushes to convert their rapidly depreciating cash into real goods, food, coal, anything with tangible value. This frantic spending pushes prices up even faster, creating a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. The value of money evaporates with terrifying speed. A salary that could support a family at the beginning of the month might not be enough to buy a single loaf of bread by the end of it. The money in your bank account, your life savings, meticulously built over decades, effectively becomes worthless. Your pension, the foundation of a secure retirement, is wiped out. The social contract is broken. This economic catastrophe sets the stage for profound social and political upheaval, as we will see in the case of Weimar Germany. The hyperinflation of the Weimar Republic did not appear out of nowhere. Its roots were deeply embedded in the immense financial strain of World War I. The German government had funded its military effort not through taxes but through borrowing, promising to repay them with interest after a swift and decisive victory. When Germany lost in 1918, it was left not with victory spoils, but with a mountain of internal debt and a shattered economy. The victorious Allied powers, particularly France, insisted that Germany pay for the vast damages caused by the war. The initial sum demanded was astronomical, far beyond what the weakened German economy could realistically produce or pay. The political situation made raising funds through taxation extremely difficult. It was politically easier to find another way to pay the bills. The German government turned to the printing press. It began to print large quantities of money to cover its expenses. Faced with crippling debt and the impossible demands of war reparations, the Weimar government made a desperate choice. Its decision to print money to cover its expenses was like pouring gasoline on a small, smoldering fire. It was a policy of monetizing its debt, turning government IOUs directly into cash. At first, the effects were not immediately catastrophic. For a brief period, the infusion of cash seemed to work. The extra money helped keep unemployment low by propping up industries and funding public works. It gave the government the funds it needed to function, paying civil servants and maintaining basic services. This temporary relief, however, was a dangerous mirage. The government wasn't creating new wealth. It was simply diluting the value of the existing money supply. Each new mark printed made every other mark in circulation worth a little bit less. The situation took a dramatic turn for the worse in January 1923. Citing Germany's failure to meet its reparation payments, French and Belgian troops occupied the Ruhr Valley, the nation's industrial heartland. In response, the German government called for a policy of passive resistance. Workers went on strike, bringing the industrial engine of the country to a grinding halt. It promised to keep paying the striking workers' wages, a patriotic pledge made with revenue it did not have. With its main source of income now paralyzed, the government was completely broke. Its only option was to turn to the printing presses with an intensity never seen before. The fire of inflation now roared into an inferno. Prices began to rise at a dizzying pace, and the value of the mark plummeted into freefall. The state printing office ran hundreds of presses day and night, churning out worthless paper. Soon, even that wasn't enough. Over 130 private firms were enlisted to join the frantic flood of banknotes. Quality was abandoned for speed. Notes became simpler, often printed on only one side to save time and ink. Denominations exploded, jumping from thousands to millions, then billions, and eventually incomprehensible trillions of marks. The velocity of money accelerated into a blur. A stack of freshly printed bills was worth less by the time it was transported from the printer to the bank. The currency was melting away in people's hands. As the flood of worthless paper money washed over Germany, the most profound casualty wasn't just economic, it was psychological. The most important casualty was trust. Trust in the government, in the economy, and in the future itself. Money functions because people collectively agree that it has value. It's a shared belief, a promise from the state that this piece of paper can be reliably exchanged for goods and services. It is a social contract built on confidence. But in 1923, that contract was shredded. The government's promise was broken, and the German people learned a brutal lesson in real time. They understood that holding on to cash, even for a few hours, was a guaranteed way to lose wealth. Life became a frantic race against the clock. A worker paid in the morning would rush to the store at lunchtime, knowing that by evening his wages might be worth half as much. Your spouse might meet you at the factory gates to take the money and immediately join the long lines at the shops, desperate to convert the rapidly depreciating paper into anything tangible. This was necessary because price tags would have to be changed multiple times a day. A meal might cost more at the time you finished it than when you ordered. Some shops even announced price rises by the hour. The absurdity was staggering. As denominations soared into the trillions, people carried huge bundles of cash for small purchases. Suitcases, laundry baskets, and wheelbarrows became the new wallets. Children played with stacks of banknotes like blocks, oblivious to their supposed value. Some companies abandoned cash altogether and paid in kind. Food and goods that held their value. In rural areas, society reverted to a primitive state of barter. Farmers demanded tools or clothing for their produce. A German woman famously fed her stove with banknotes. The paper they were printed on was worth less than firewood. But the deepest tragedy was the silent, invisible theft from an entire generation. The prudent middle class, the savers, the pensioners, they were all wiped out. A lifetime of savings, carefully set aside for a secure retirement or a child's education, evaporated into thin air. War bonds, mortgages, pensions, all rendered worthless. This economic devastation hollowed out the bedrock of German society, leaving behind a legacy of bitterness, fear, and a profound sense of betrayal that would have devastating consequences. The most enduring image of the Weimar hyperinflation is the wheelbarrow. People literally hauled money to buy basics. Tellers weighed stacks rather than count them. The paper became more useful than the currency it represented. Stories spread: a stolen suitcase, money left behind, 2 coffees ordered at once before prices doubled. Its most devastating effect was the annihilation of savings. Prudent, hard-working families were wiped out. Desperation fueled theft, suspicion, and hostility. The elderly on fixed pensions suffered terribly. A few profited, speculators, industrialists, stoking resentment. The crisis discredited moderate democratic parties. Extremist movements thrived on fear and anger. In November 1923, Hitler's failed beer hall putsch made him a national figure. Stability returned with the mark, but the damage was done. Money is not just paper, it is a promise, a form of social trust. Wheelbarrows of cash, children with notes, money burned as fuel. Permanent warnings. When money melts, people want bread, not billions of worthless marks. The trust underpinning money is precious and fragile. Once broken, painfully hard to rebuild. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. It really does help our channel.